Prime Minister Office of Armenia and point of contact of OGP. And this session was organized by me and my colleague from Romania. She's also acting as panelist, but the main idea of discussing youth participation came from both of us. And we all speak about youth within open government partnership context. And we refers it as a teen users group as to a resource of development, and also marginalized group which should be better involved in decision-making processes. All countries has their unique recipes of implementing or integrating this group of people, addressing them. We consider youth participation as alternative information resource for getting or raising hidden challenges or give insights to policymakers. So all the ways from Armenian crowdsourcing to electronic participation portals of Indonesia, Mongolia, devoted to this problem. But also some countries go further and make institutionalize this participation. In some cases as UK, Spain, Romania, and other countries here to raise their concerns and their experiences. So we all definitely know that the participation of youth will definitely lay on the long way and of development and implementation of OGP and SDG agendas. Here are in our panelists, we have civil society and government champions who are here to share with you their experience. We have 5 participants, definitely from 5 different countries. So the first floor I would like to give to Maria. To you. Or to Jess. Our first panelist would be Jess Blair, who is the director of ERS Kimru. Am I right? Kimru, okay. A campaigning organization which works to improve democracy. Jess has worked with nearly 1,500 people across the Wales to understand the barriers to participation. Last year, Jess ran Our Voices Heard project, which worked with 200 young people across the country and enabling them to come up with ideas to improve how young people engage in politics. Please, Jess, go deeper.
Great. So do you want me to introduce myself a little bit first?
Okay.
We are a campaigning organisation and we work in basically trying to improve democracy in Wales, which is a part of the UK, but we work all across the UK and in Northern Ireland as well. I think what's really exciting about youth participation at the moment in Wales is that we kind of are on a precipice. We're about to see votes at 16 come into force in Wales, and I think that gives us a new opportunity to really engage young people and make sure they're taking part in our democracy in a proper and informed way.
This is very interesting. We turn to this. Okay. Then our second panelist is Maria. She is the General Director for Public Governance in the Spanish government since 2016. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. In this capacity, Maria was running different activities to promote youth participation in public policies and to raise awareness among young people of the importance of government, open government. Yes.
Well, you're right. You did a very good summary. So I don't know what I have to say, but well, it's right. We are trying to promote young people participation and also to raise awareness about the importance of open government. So we have many different kind of activities, such as training young public employees. We also undertake awareness-raising activities among youth associations and also in universities to enhance participation. and to share with them the open governance values. And we also have a very beautiful project in the schools. We are training teachers and students in the schools. And well, I think I will have more time to talk about it. This is a short presentation. I intend. I go on?
Yes.
I talk about it? No, it's a stop.
You have 5
Okay.
minutes. You can go
I can go on. Perfect. So, sorry, I didn't know. This is very spontaneous. Okay. So, well, what we have done we're training students in the schools, and the teachers. The purpose is to help and to prepare young people for the exercise of democratic citizenship. So these programs include training courses for teachers, activities in the schools, and also the children visiting, the students visiting public institutions, and also the civil servants and the authorities visiting the schools. And we also have elaborated guides for the teachers and for the students. They are freely available in the internet, but we have brought some of them. So please, after the panel, you feel free to take them. We have translated, of course, they were written in Spanish, but we have translated them into English and into French. So here they are for you. And what we have done is what we have begun with pilot experience in 40 schools. So the students have had the opportunity to learn about open government. They have made presentations, videos about the idea of open government. They had made panels and flyers. They came up with games. They have working groups. They have done interviews and conducted investigations. They have also proposed ideas for a more transparent environment in the schools, and they have made very interesting and compromising questions to the management team. Other students have, for example, they have simulated participatory budgets, and others have brought ideas to compile a knowledge bank, for example. And all the students have had the opportunity also to visit, as I said, institutions, and also receiving the authorities. So the civil servants, the officials, had the opportunity to explain to the students who they are and what they do. And I think this is very important because the students had the opportunity to understand the importance of the public institutions. And we think that kind of measures will lead to a society much more aware and informed, and it will of public matters, and this will further enrich the debate in the development of public policies and service. And that's it.
Thank you.
No,
Very
you're
impressive.
welcome.
I think you will get more questions from our participants, but it's voilà. Okay. The third panelist is Larissa, as I've mentioned. She is from government of Romania, and she is working for government and is gatekeeper of open government movement in the country. And I know what is it. And Larissa will take about Romania's open government commitment targeting at youth engagement. As you having your action plan, the commitment refers to youth.
Yeah.
Please.
So as part of our national action plans, the ministry that is responsible for youth, respectively the Youth and Sport Ministry, has included for the past 2 plans. So since 2016, they have included a commitment on youth participation and consultations, which regards the implementation of the structured dialogue mechanism, which is available, which is is a requirement of the European Union since 2010, and the other, and I will detail on that. The other commitment refers to the development or the creation of youth advisory councils. So regarding the structured dialogue, the European Union put in place this mechanism, which is the framework for communication between youth and the decision makers regarding the youth policies and youth issues concerning young people. So there is also component at the European level and also at the national level. There is a national working group which is formed pretty similarly to the OGP multi-stakeholder forum. Is composed of representatives of the public administration that is in charge with youth policies, and similarly with representatives from the youth organizations, student organizations, not necessarily NGOs, but organizations that deal with students or pupils or marginalized students, so with problems and so on. So what they do, they have regular meetings. They have some working groups which involve consultations, in-person consultations on several issues, specific themes, as well as they are using online questionnaires on policies that need to be discussed and approved. So, and this changes, it has an 18-month cycle, which, and it changes after this period, the components. Regarding the youth advisory councils, the national law on youth includes provisions that the public administration that is in charge with youth policies in general should consult. So this is in law. So should consult regularly with people, with young people, and they also ask the municipalities, the public administration at the local level, to have these youth advisory councils. So it's a similar structure that is formed from administrative, public administration representatives and youth organization representatives that work on whatever happens at the local level, which is really closer to the community. So they should be more efficient, since it is at a lower level, at a local level, and they're close to what happens within the community. There are, of course, problems, but maybe we can. And apart from that, I want to mention that as part of our OGP process, we have also, we are part of OGP since 2011, and we have constantly included young people in the dialogue, so I think that's also important. Thanks.
Thank you, Larissa. It's very amazing that you go deeper and deeper to schools, to local youth communities. It's very impressive. So, next to me is sitting Hercules. Hercules Jim comes all the way from Papua New Guinea. Really? He coordinates the Open Government Partnership in the country. He is also a researcher in Open Budget Index in partnership with International Budget Partnership, and helps to facilitate the budget training initiative. Is it okay?
Yep, that's good. Hi, everyone. I won't really talk on my work, but I will talk on my extra work, off-day work, especially in my engagement with young people in my country. But a bit of context, so you will understand where I'm coming from when I maybe go through a discussion. We have 860 plus languages in my country, really diverse. Actually, English is my fourth language. We only less than 10% of our population have access to internet. Maybe less than 5 have access to social media. Facebook has been one of the source where people express themselves lately. Prime Minister resigned yesterday. One of the major factors is the influence of Facebook, used by only 5% of the population. 75% of our population made up of young people between the age of, 25 and below. So, it's a bit of context, so maybe when we go through, you can understand where I'm coming from. Okay. All right, thank you.
It's okay, thank you. You can move it. Okay. And I come to my country, Armenia. Next to me speaker is Datev Barsegyan from Transparency International Anti-Corruption Center. Datev will share the recent experience of Armenia, where youth had a key role in non-violent verbal revolution in Armenia. So,
do I need mic or no? Thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the youth power issues in the scope of OGP. As you told, Armenia has been going through big changes nowadays after a peaceful Velvet Revolution that we had last year, and you can easily guess who was the moving force of this revolution. Of course, youth. When you were talking about youth symbols before this discussion, yeah? Okay, no, not go to that. Okay, thanks. I will come back to that question later. So, as once said the leader of the protest and nowadays our new prime minister, the revolution happened because first to the protest came young people, youngsters, then their parents joined, and then the grandparents joined the protest, so they succeed. Even before the revolution, Transparency International Armenian chapter, as I'm representing it, has been actively working with youth in different spheres. Here we have our calling from Journalist Club Aspares, and with Journalist Club Aspares and with the support of USAID and Open Society Foundations Armenia, we have 10 civic youth centers in all the regions of Armenia. We are trying to work with the beneficiaries of these youth centers and to involve them in different projects, different activities, mainly in participatory monitoring activities. They are trained to do this, and they can use this knowledge and experience even after the end of our projects, and they can use these tools to do it in other spheres. We did it in education, healthcare, and in other areas. We find out that one of the high topics that youth are very interested in is election monitoring processes, and we have been actively working in this sphere. I could say that more than 1,000, even 4,000 and 5,000 people during this year, youngsters during these years, they have been trained and they have been engaged as citizen observers during local and national elections, and we are continuing to do this. We also think that the important thing of being engaged, of being demanding, and to participate in public life is to be educated. That's why TI pays great attention to education of youngsters. It's very similar that you told us about your experience. We are doing and conducting trainings in all the regions of Armenia and also in capital Yerevan for mainly youngsters, high school students, students of universities, even mid-career professionals about types of corruption, causes and consequences, anti-corruption fight. We also have anti-corruption school, and during this school, our students of the school, during 1 month, they had the opportunity to talk with high-ranking officials, independent experts from different spheres and discuss the corruption risk in the specific areas, and also to discuss the ways how they can reduce these corruption risks, and how young people actually they can be involved. In the end of this school, they had their own projects, how they can participate and how they can be involved in these projects. As Lilia told, nowadays in Armenia, youth is very demanding. They are very engaged. I'm happy to that. And they are still fighting for their rights. Especially, I could say that they are fighting for the right of good education and reforms in the educational sphere. I will continue later, yeah? Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, dear panelists, for bringing such inspiring stories from your countries in the context of OGP and also in the context of youth participation. It is raising a lot of questions, but I would like to share one question with you, then turn to our audience for the questions or experience. Okay. But frankly speaking, we in government do not communicate with youth. We don't thinking at first to turn to this group and to raise their voices. Frankly speaking, it is not the tradition, and we don't consider it as a main channel. And the second question is, what are some of the tips that you could share on reaching out to this new target group? Please. Starts from Jess.
So the work that we've been doing with young people has been kind of focused on schools. So given that the extension of the vote and votes to 16 is coming in, I think it's really, really important to make sure that we're properly engaging with young people to equip them with the knowledge and skills in order for them to be able to participate in democracy. So the work that we did in schools kind of had three main principles. So we looked at the principle that if a policy decision is affecting young people, then young people should be engaged in that policy decision and they should be listened to. I think the second is around co-production and the importance of making sure that young people's voices shape that policy as it's coming along. And then the third is that there's a proper outcome to feed into. So there's no point engaging young people if governments aren't going to listen. So I think it's really important they do that. But I would also say there's some kind of low-hanging fruit that governments forget about, and part of that is moving away from jargon. It's access to information and producing things that are accessible to young people. So one thing the Welsh government's been doing is doing young people's consultations, so versions that reach out to young people of kind of mainstream consultations that might be a little bit more technical, so making sure that that information is accessible as well.
Thank you, Jess. And we'd like to hear from Maria.
Well, I think that when channeling young people, the first thing you have to realize is that you are not young anymore. This is the first thing. Young people, yeah, it's a pity, but it's true. Young people speak a different language. They communicate through different channels and means. And there is a bigger generational gap with youth than there was when we were young. So once you have realized that, what you have to do is to try to have young people in your team. And then you have to have also, it's very important to have clear some ideas. The first idea is that channeling with young people doesn't mean necessarily to breaking an apathy barrier. I mean, maybe it's not a question of apathy between young people. It's more a question of disbelief. According to a recent survey, OECD survey, 17 out of 35 member countries, in 70 countries, young people express less trust in government than their parents. And the second question you have to understand is that young people, there is not a model or a prototype of young people. As in adults, young people are very different between them. So there is not a single or only one way to interact with them. That's also very important. You cannot have a prototype. And then the third idea, and very important, what you have to realize is that young people are going to be the leaders. They are going to be your bosses. They are going to be the ones who will take care of you, so it's better to talk with them. I mean, you cannot decide the future without them, and you have to understand their experience and their views. So those are like very, sense common tips. Once you have realized you are not young anymore. That happened to me. It's your turn. And I won't confess my age.
Your presentation
it's my turn to realize I'm not young anymore. Thanks.
It is more philosophic.
I think my experience from working with young people from the Open Government team is very similar to what was already said. So this institutionalization and the provision in the law or whatever regulation there is that these consultations should be mandatory I think it's important. Maybe it's a bit more difficult to implement, and when it comes to practice, it's not always perfect, but it's a good point to start. And other things are, in our discussions with them, I think most of them are involved when they reach student years. So what they said is it is really important to educate them while young on everything that it implies civic participation. So I think it's a common conclusion for us here. And another way that they proposed to improve government youth collaboration is to centralize, as Jess said, have a specific platform, online platform, that gathers all these consultations so they know where to look at. And as she said, it's important to be something dedicated to them, where all resources should be available. I think that is really important. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I think I have 3 more minutes for my introduction. Especially, I was going to talk about my engagement with young people. I co-founded an organization called Jawaga Tertiary Students and Graduate Association. We basically bring university students together to our provinces, and we conduct awareness on issues affecting our people. Last 2 months ago, we did research on climate change and was published in our accepted by climate change, one of the climate change organizations in our country, and we made a presentation 2 weeks ago. When I was in high school, I started an organization called the Youth Against Corruption. It's a program under Transparency International in our country, which basically empowers young people to be agents of change and to fight corruption. And then in 2016, while I was studying at the University of Papua New Guinea, I led the protest against our Prime Minister, who resigned yesterday, and so I have a really big celebration to do when I go back. We mobilized 4 state universities. We protest. Unfortunately, a few people died. Some got injured. I was terminated from my university study. So it took me 10 years to go to Supreme Court to win the court, and then go back to studies. And I had 2 weeks to finalize my exam and just get my degree, whatever. So, and then when I work, I'm working with coordinate OGP in my country, but also a youth representative in our National Steering Committee. So I represent the young people in our steering committee to discuss. That was after my involvement with OGP and the first OGP youth workshop in Georgia, Tbilisi, last year. So before I continue, I would like to acknowledge my friend from youth around the world who were part of the second OGP youth workshop here in Georgia, who are here with us. Thank you for coming and thank you for the support. And I will also encourage young people here who are in this room to also apply and maybe attend maybe the next OGP youth workshop. And so there's a lot of work need to be done in terms of engaging young people in the OGP. Because if you talk about OGP, like I said, in my country, it's the essence and the center of OGP is public participation. And if like in my country, if 75% of the young people are not engaged, then what is really OGP? And I think I agree with you all in terms of involving young people in schools. One of my ideas, I just thought of it just now while sitting down, is to really make awareness and on OGP in every schools in the country, and also SDG by putting competition up, like this prize award of that, you win a laptop or something. Give us your idea on how to implement SDG, OGP, and in a way you do awareness and get young people involved, and in early as possible, so they will be involved in this discussion. So basically, I didn't just pop out from nowhere like I want to get involved in this, but all this began when I was in high school, starting involving in all these things, and I believe that this is the way forward. You can really go down to high school students and really talk to them for sustainability of SDG and OGP and fully engage. And live up to the name of OGP. We want to consult young people, and there's really big issue of really whether we are listening to them or no. There was a youth forum in my country, and they was planning to design the youth policy, and they had 2 tables for young people to come and sit in, and there were other table on that side, and academics and really big people were there, and they brought young people on the table, and they were talking and consulting people on the youth policy, and they were just looking at these experts, to talk and give ideas on youth policy, but they were not given any, they didn't give any attention, they were not looking at young people, and so this is really sad, this really frustrates young people. Do you, will you feel frustrated if you are in the conference like that? Yeah. It is really, really bad. So one of the things that government need to do is bring young people, yes, and consult them, but really talk to them, you know. This is our future. And we want government to work with us to build our future, you know. It's good that government, you know, they believe that they know everything and they do what is best for, you know, for young people and the future of the country. But it is more important if young people are involved in the discussion to create policy, but also implement those policy and hold government accountable. So we build a generation of people who have conscience, who will contribute positively to the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Hercules. Great statement, not to bring young people, but also to talk to them. Thank you. Impressive.
I will just shortly add 3 points to what my colleagues have said. First of all, you talked about how to keep young people attracted because they speak another language, as you said. For that, we are, for example, our organization, we are creating games. We have anti-corruption mobile application for them. We have anti-corruption animated glossary for them. We have online platform which citizens and young people, they can use to report corruption cases in schools. So we are kind of trying to get them attracted, to keep them attracted. What about government and young people cooperation? I think that governments need concrete youth policy. That will reflect the values and the priorities of the youngsters of this society. Talking about Armenia, I would say that we tried to make this youth policy, and we had a big youth forum, and part of this forum was like what you told us about that, but no, it was a good forum. But nowadays we are changing the structure of the government, and we don't go to we are not going to have a youth ministry anymore. I don't know how it will reflect on the youth policy, etc. We will see it later, but I think that youth policy is very important. The third point that I want to say that youth, usually young people, they are engaged and they are active when they know that their voice would be heard. I mean, of course they like fun forums, etc. We love that, we love to have fun, but also we want to see what influence our voice or what influence our participation can make. So government has to show this, I think.
Thank you, thank you. Also, thank you for efforts that you do for implementation of this youth forum. But I think it should be a concern of government to put it on strategic level, not leaving on the shoulder of Transparency International or other organization. And frankly speaking, we have no any model or method of doing so, and sometimes government is frightening of cooperation with youth, and as they do not know the further problems that can face. And I would like to ask you to bring here exact platforms or models of making such forums in government level that you can dedicate with us or share with us. Please tell us from what you started.
So our Voices Heard project that we ran last year worked with 11 schools all across Wales, which is like a small country, but actually relatively diverse in terms of its geographic landscape, different languages, that kind of thing. So we went into schools directly to co-produce recommendations with 14 and 15-year-olds about how to improve political education and what basically they needed to know. So they came up with the recommendations themselves. They all voted on which recommendations made it through. And then they got presented to government. So they got presented to the Education Minister last November. And she's hopefully, we're working with government at the moment to make sure that those are built into the plans around Votes of 16. So a couple of weeks ago, she just announced £600,000, which is about 1 million Canadian dollars, to go into that kind of program. So I think there's some really positive outcomes there. And I guess the point about youth forums that I'd like to make is that I think forums can be quite restrictive. So I brought this to talk about the Welsh Youth Parliament, and I think there's a really good point there about having parliaments and representation of young people, but we must remember that they don't represent all young people. There's huge parts of communities that are left out of that kind of representation. And I think it's really important that we look kind of beyond forums and at the foundational stuff of what's actually going to reach all young people at all different kind of intersectional levels, and look at the basics of education, political education, and access to democracy and the right to vote.
Thank you.
Okay, in the Spanish Constitution established the duty of the of public authorities to promote youth participation in all levels, cultural, social, economic, and political levels. So we try to undertake, well, we do undertake many actions to promote that participation. And regarding forums or platforms to make it possible, we have a National Youth Council that is formed with a form of youth associations and platforms. And I think they play a major role to enhance public debate through the deliberation between young people and those responsible for the public policies. They spread their action throughout the territory, throughout the country, all around the country, through what they call, through the so-called youth embassies. And I think it's a very good example of joint involvement between policymakers and the association that represent young people. Furthermore, we have also an interregional youth council to strengthen collaboration between the state and the regions in all areas concerning youth policies. That's also very important in Spain. And as Larissa said, at the European level, we in Spain also collaborate in that dialogue. The European Commission is playing a major role to promote dialogue with young people. They want to have first-hand input from young people, and they are promoting dialogue, a communication, the structured dialogue that Larissa told. And I think it's a very good way to make the young people voice heard. So I think we have like different levels of forums and platforms. I think this European model is a very good one. I think I'm very glad you talk about it, because it's inspiring. I think it's good.
Thank you, Maria. Dan?
Yes, I'm not sure if I have too much to add. But for example, this national working group that is established as part of this structured dialogue mechanism is now working. We already have, as I said, a law on youth, which is okay, I think, but both the ministry and the young people organizations decided that it should be improved, and there is room for improvement there, and they are actively working through this working group that is already established at the national central level. They are working.
Who is conducting?
The Ministry for Youth.
Sport.
Yes, and sport. They are, from what I understood, they are the input of the youth organizations. Some of them are really powerful and involved and very civically active. Really did make a difference. So just constant dialogue and I don't know, as Hercules said, maybe a shift from consultation to co-decision would be important and to be put in place if possible. And it's the same with the youth advisory councils. The municipalities, not all of them, decide to create this at the local level. And there are several projects that are really important for the community that went through with the help of the youth involved in this framework, in this particular framework.
Thank you. This is very impressive.
Thank you. So let me begin by saying that we should stop seeing young people as leaders of tomorrow, but leaders today. I was part of I've been listening to young people talking about, innovation they are doing in Mexico, about fiscal transparency, and I was really amazed that as early as 18 and 17 years old, they were doing amazing things. There were some youth council from Canada as early as grade 11 students, in part of the discussion. And so it can really tell us that young people are not just leaders of tomorrow, but they are leaders today. If we can really invest in them today, they will be powerful tomorrow. We have National Youth Authority, and we have National Youth Policy, but before I begin, I shared with you guys about the context of my country. So National Youth Policy is there, but the implementation is a bit challenging. So we decided that after Georgia, my workshop in Georgia, we went back and we started an organization called PN's Youth Coalition. So basically, we bring together 21 different local NGOs and civil society that really works with young people or have interest with young people. We bring them together to the table and we discuss issue. How do we address those things, and then how, So first thing is to bring our voice together and make it stronger so government can really listen to us. And secondly, to share resources and expertise so that we can help each other. And so 2 days ago actually, we studied in one of the courses in Harvard together, the 20 youth coalition partners, to really work on the youth issue in the country, and it was finally got published by Harvard University. I can share with you guys to look at it. So one of the point that I'm trying to make is to amplify the voice of young people through existing network, bringing all these organizations together, talk to them, address them. So for the first time in our country, last year, there was a call by the Constitutional Law Reform Commission to address the issue of drug and alcohol, update the law, and also on representation and election. So for the first time in our country, with our Youth Coalition Network, we did a survey throughout the country. We collected results. Within 4 weeks, we collected around almost 1,000 response from young people. But like I said in the beginning, only 10% have access to internet, so you will understand the struggle we had. But we got the data, and we presented to the government on the view of young people on the drug and alcohol policy, and also on the representation. And I was not surprised when the result came that only 10% of the young people believe that their voice are being heard in the parliament. So, yeah.
They don't trust?
They don't trust the government, one, but number two, they felt that their voice are not being heard at the parliament because rarely they don't talk about youth policy or youth issues in the parliament anyway. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tatev, you can share any model, but you can envisage some perspectives which you would like to see.
Yes. I don't have much to add, but I hope that our new government, and which is quite young government, we have young government and young parliament nowadays, would rather than standing or speaking for youth, they need to stand with youth, speaking for themselves, and to make some institutionalized platform for that. So I hope you would do that.
Thank you. So, as Hercules mentioned, that young people are the leader of today. Really? Yes. Not for the tomorrow or for the future. Okay. And we can consider them as ambassadors who can rise and serve for regional cooperation in the region, out of region, or cross-country cooperation. So, young people can easily mobilize the communication and then can easily raise questions. This is their unique power, I think. So I would like to ask, how can we better capitalize on this potential and use the capacity of youth networks for global good? As you know, this year within SDGs, youth all over the world organize the flash mob, which raises the global questions, climate, education, and also democracy. So how we can move this network for global goods?
So in Wales, we actually have legislation on the Sustainable Development Goals called the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And that kind of came from a really kind of long process, but it was a big engagement project called the Wales We Want, where people were expected to ask to contribute and say about what they wanted from their future. I think where the challenges come in terms of the SDGs is implementation and making them relevant to all. And I think that's the challenge we've really got in Wales, is making young people see that that piece of legislation, the SDGs, are really relevant to them and relate to them. So I think it's a communication thing, and I think we're only going to harness the global good of young people in terms of the SDGs when we get over that communication issue and really get beyond that and make the SDGs really relevant to young people.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so well, I think once again it's a question of building youth for the future. I think all our efforts in open government will be in vain if we don't help them to understand the importance of its values. If they don't, we don't prepare them to commit with the democratic principles, to commit themselves with the democratic principles, and if they don't understand the importance of for example, of the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's why
What's about open government?
So, sorry?
What's about open government?
Yeah, so well, that's why we are undertaking all kind of training activities in open government, of course, and for young people. We think it's very important. Open government is important for the objective number 16, but it's important for every policy. And we think it's like a very good lever, a very important lever. In Spain, we have decided that open government is a lever for those sustainable development goals. I always say that in Spanish, so it's difficult to say it in English. And so as I said, the first thing we do is training and preparing students for the exercise of democratic citizenships. And we also, we think the goal has to be to achieve a much more active role of our society. And we have also specific activities. For example, we have a youth institute that is promoting information campaigns, and they also are promoting actions to empower young people, to help, for example, youth association to make their own proposals, their own initiatives, to propose their own solutions through the use of IT platforms. We are also undertaking activities among civil servants, young civil servants. We want them. We think a cultural change is needed, so we are training them because we think they can be very perfect agents of change. We are reviewing the programs for the selection of a new generation of public servants. So we are including open government principles in all the programs who will be taken into account in this selection process. And well, so those are some ideas.
Thank you.
I think it's really important that we are here together, and this is something that is the same on all OGP issues. We are here together to gather best practices and see what, put them together and have them available for everyone so that we can identify what can be scaled up, maybe used at a bigger scale and another level, and we can. It is really important that all these best practices from different countries are available and we actively use this network that is available to us through the OGP to just promote and exchange experience so that we can replicate. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I like the idea of youth. What was it? Youth ambassador. So one of the resolutions we came out with this week to present to the steering committee, and we did discuss with the steering committee, is to have a youth rep in the steering committee. So basically to give a youth perspective on every issues discussed at the OGP steering committee level. I think that can also apply to SDGs. And so people in my country, especially in the government, have no idea. Maybe few of them know about OGP, but a lot of them have no idea about OGP. And can you can imagine, young people have no idea on OGP, and it is very challenging. And also in terms of SDG in my country, it has not been localized. The policy has not been passed. So I don't know what is happening. So it is really a big challenge. So yeah, but the idea of youth ambassador is really good one. I don't really like, I don't know, but sometimes I don't like listening to old people talking to me about, this and that. I mean, what do you know about today? Yeah? You don't know, I told, my boss is not there. So I told my boss, we need a Facebook, account for our organization. So I was like, so what, And so I created a Facebook account for the organization, but then we are not using it. So young people should be involved. I'm sorry, I'm just getting away from what I was going to say. Youth, yeah, yeah. But you can imagine, the level of thinking from the past. I mean, older people and the younger generation today. Yeah. When young people talk to each other, when they become youth ambassadors and go out there and speaking to young people, and if we are able to embrace what they're doing and promote them and give them space to rise up and talk and be ambassadors, then in a way it challenges young people. So if he can do it, he's my age. He's just got same brain as I do. I can do it too. So I think this is a really good idea to have youth ambassadors in everywhere in our country, and especially at the OGP level and SEG. Thank you.
Thank you, too. And last one?
I also like the idea of having youth ambassadors, but I will advise, or I will suggest to use these networks for concrete topics, to discuss concrete topics, because sometimes it becomes like a cultural exchange. This is also a good thing, but I think it will be more useful to make these networks, make these discussions, or conferences on specific concrete topics. And besides, I think that not many young people in Armenia know about SDGs or OGP, so we have work in awareness raising about this too.
I think this is general question and general challenge for all countries, developing or developed countries, as this should be one of our strategies to make aware of citizens, not only young people, but also citizens, what's going on from or within the government. And finally, all these processes are doing for making their lives better. Before our panel, we are talking with our panelists to bring here some symbols or to symbolize youth power, how they understand it. And some of them came here prepared, yes? And I asked Jess to show her symbol.
So I genuinely actually bought something like a show and tell because, I take my instructions seriously. So these are the first visual minutes from the first ever Welsh Youth Parliament meeting. I'll leave them there and people can have a look if they like. I think, as I said earlier, I don't think youth parliaments are necessarily like a panacea, but I do think they're a positive step forward in terms of representing young people and having youth voices being heard in the political process. I think in Wales in particular, a third of our youth parliament is made up of people from people that have been nominated by civil society organisations that represent underrepresented people. So I think that's actually a really positive step. In terms of what the Youth Parliament came out with, I think it's reflected in these minutes as well. There's some really cool stuff. So they wanted to prioritise mental health support, they wanted to prioritise climate change, and also things about political education. So we think that's really positive, and looking forward to see what they come up with next. And I'll leave that there if anyone wants to have a look at it later.
Okay. Thank you. One question, please. In one word.
Yeah.
Benefits of youth participation in decision-making processes, in one word. And also the challenge, the most challenge that they face in one word.
the benefits is the one word benefit is knowledge. Like, I think that there's a massive underestimation of young people, and people don't think that young people know how to vote. Young people, frankly, terrify me. They know so much more than I bloody do at that age, honestly. They're gunning for my job, seriously. I think the challenge is around political will and the seriousness that governments take this and their willingness to listen to young people.
Political will
Political
as a
will.
challenge,
Yeah.
and knowledge as a benefit.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maria?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't brought anything symbol, but well, when I can say what I feel when the first thing that comes to my mind when thinking of youth power. I'm sorry, but it's my children and their future. I have 2 children.
It is within family.
Sorry, they are young people. I mean,
Yes, but it is within family. But what's out of family?
yeah, I don't understand you. I'm sorry.
I said it is within your family.
No,
Really?
I think, well, this is the first part of the question. I think of my children, but I also think of a generation that feels neglected and therefore has risen its voice for the ideas to be listened, but not only by politicians, but also by society. That's what I think.
Thank you. And paraphrase the benefits of youth participation and also challenge in one word.
Well, the benefit is including the ones, inclusion. Okay, inclusion, yeah, okay,
And
one
the
word.
challenge?
And the challenge, understanding them.
So just one word. That's a bit complicated. For benefits, I think it's change.
Change?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for progress, hopefully. And challenge, not sure. Yeah, implementation, I think. Just the
Implementation.
actual putting things
Of
in practice.
agendas or implementation of what? Cooperation, inclusion?
The actual practice of this participation. So
Implementation. Okay.
there are things to be learned there.
Participation, I mean. Okay.
I don't have any symbol of youth power, but what comes to my mind when I hear youth power is the future,
As a,
the brighter future.
okay.
Yeah, I think that's all I can say. And
As a symbol.
there's a symbol.
Okay.
So there was another
Use
question.
power, you
Yeah,
symbolize as an...
the brighter future.
Future.
I should
Okay.
light a lambia or something, but
Okay.
yeah.
That's a good one.
The next question was about...
To paraphrase, use power, the benefits and the challenge in one
Okay.
word.
So benefit, okay, just the same, brighter future. And one of the challenge is engaging young people, because you have to get their interest, you know. Young people have their own interest. When they go on social media, they don't want to talk about corruption or government. They want to upload their photos and all these things. But really, we have to, how do we really engage young people to get involved? We are talking about government going out there involving young people, but how do we get young people to, involved? I think this is the biggest challenge.
Really. And Tatev?
I have talked a little bit about the participation of youth and their role in the revolution, in the peaceful revolution that we had. I bought just a few, yes, as a symbol, I bought just a few pictures I can show after that. It's written, free and independent students. This is how our students were occupying the streets and the squares, and this one is also about the State University. So I think that youth power is like eternal engine, and they are unstoppable. They take the challenges and impossible challenges until they reach it. So this is what youth power symbolize me. About the benefits, I think the biggest benefit is going along with time. Sorry, it's not one word. I don't know how it's in one word. And the biggest challenge to be able to implement their ambitions, to implement their ambitious ideas. Implementation of their ambitious ideas, because I hope that their ideas are very ambitious.
Thank you. I do not want to abuse my power And I want to turn to our audience, and I'm interested who has a question or want to share the experience. Okay.
Hello, my name's Sabrina. I have kind of like an anecdote and then like it's connected to a question. So kind of just like you're talking a lot about like youth forums and having youth as ambassadors. And I have like a story from my friend who, she's Muslim and she wears hijab, and she came to the youth forum that the Prime Minister hosted here in Ottawa. And she was put on a watch list, even though her like ticket was bought by the government of Canada. But because her last name's Khan and she wears hijab, she was harassed. And this happened on her way home as well. And then while she was in Ottawa, she had a bag that had a picture of a woman wearing niqab where her face was covered, and they didn't allow her to bring the bag into Parliament. And so I'm wondering, when we do have these forums, how do we make them accessible for youth, and talking about all, like not talking about youth as one lump category, and like how youth are intersectional and have different barriers to accessing government and different levels of trust in government because of incidences like this. Okay.
So my question is about kind of after the engagement step. In my experience, a lot of youth that get engaged and are on these forums, and myself having like been consulted as a youth, I think there's a lot of disaffection that happens afterwards when those policies aren't implemented. And yes, their voice was heard at the time and they're like, oh, good idea, we'll like try to implement that, and then nothing happens. And I think that a lot of youth, like, although there's a lot of engagement efforts increasing, we're seeing an increasing amount of disaffection among youth. And like, at least in Canada, I think increasing cynicalism towards the government. And so my question is when you're engaging youth and working on that, how are we combating the fact that the cynicism and the disaffection is actually increasing, even as we're trying to engage and bring youth into the conversation, maybe not entirely effectively?
Thank you very much.
Merci. Je m'appelle Ahmata Santiana. Je suis de la République du Tchad. Je suis un jeune de la société civile. Alors, je voudrais d'abord commencer par une remarque. En ce qui concerne la composition du panel, je ne dirais pas que c'est raciste, mais ce n'est pas juste, ce n'est pas le panel qu'il faut mettre. Alors maintenant, j'ai suivi de bout en bout les intervenants. Alors, pour ce qui est de la question des jeunes, dans le but de renforcer la participation des jeunes dans la société, il faudra d'abord faire comprendre aux gens que les jeunes sont un groupe diversifié avec aussi des besoins variés selon les facteurs comme le sexe, l'origine, la géographie et le développement économique des pays dans lesquels ils vivent. Alors, si nous voyons cela, nous allons de facto voir maintenant la jeunesse et l'éducation, la jeunesse et l'emploi, la jeunesse et la santé, la jeunesse et la politique. Alors maintenant, de l'autre côté, tout à l'heure, j'ai entendu maintenant parler des questions de Conseil national de jeunesse dans certains pays comme la Grande-Bretagne et l'Espagne. Moi, je ne peux pas prendre ce modèle-là et le copier chez moi parce que nous n'avons pas les mêmes réalités. C'est pourquoi il faut d'abord identifier le besoin des jeunes et après avoir identifié le besoin des jeunes, il faut chercher maintenant à les impliquer dans les instances de prise de décision. Alors maintenant, quand vous voyez aujourd'hui, dans mon pays par exemple, pour être un député, il faut d'abord franchir 35 ans. Pour être président de la République, il faut 45 ans. Alors maintenant, nous avons construit juste un petit panel. Je me demande, bon, j'avais assisté à plusieurs assises pareilles. Est-ce qu'on rend compte vraiment à des institutions qui peuvent vraiment demander aux États de favoriser les jeunes? quelquefois, moi, je trouve que c'est des discussions qui sont laissées sur place sans rapport. Alors, pour qu'il y ait d'influence, il faudra qu'il y ait un rapport dignement rédigé qui doit être communiqué à la fin du sommet pour que, voilà, que les pays membres prennent acte. Et il faut aussi de la communication pour que le PGO soit compris par tous les États. Moi, je suis venu, mais mon pays n'est pas membre du PGO. Maintenant, parlant des ODD, les objectifs du développement durable. Alors, imaginez, en 2000, il y a les EMD, objectifs du millénaire pour le développement. Encore, il y a eu les ODD. Ensuite, il y a l'agenda VSO3. Mais finalement, on n'a pas atteint les OMD, on est venu sur les ODD et ensuite sur l'agenda. Donc, plus tard, on nous dira encore autre chose. Il faudra qu'on soit un peu précis et il faudra qu'on atteigne les objectifs fixés. Il ne faudra pas qu'on sorte des coqs à l'âne et finalement, on laissera tout sans pouvoir le finir. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
So in terms of that first question about making youth forums accessible for all, I agree it's a massive issue. I met a young person the other day who also wears a hijab actually, and she was saying about how she goes to these things and then is expected to almost represent all Muslim people, and like that's completely insane. We wouldn't expect that of anyone else, so why would we expect that of some parts of our community? It's crazy. I think the big thing I think youth forums at the moment are missing is they're expecting young people to come to them. What we need to be doing is going into communities and working directly with young people in those communities. So we did a project last year where we were trying to engage people who didn't vote. We went to like Zumba classes, aerobics classes, we went to like pantomimes and stuff to actually try and meet people that weren't normally going to be engaged in politics. I think that's kind of what's missing in the conversation at the moment. In terms of combating disaffection, I think that's like an issue that all politicians are grappling with. I don't think it's just affecting young people, but there is I think there is a point about that feedback loop and making sure that we don't kind of go in and engage young people and then that's the end of it. Government especially needs to kind of be going back to young people, having an iterative conversation. And then that final point about compelling countries at the end of this summit to really engage young people. I think that was the point. I didn't have headphones for the first part of it. I agree. I think what we need to be doing at the end of this summit is coming out with tangible actions, and I think there's a real possibility it could turn into a talking shop, and we need to actually see progress and recommendations coming out of this summit.
Thank you. Maria?
Okay. Well, there were a lot of questions. How to make accessible platforms. Well, in our case, we try to have youth associations all around the country, in all the municipalities, and I think they are quite open. Of course, as I said, not everybody wants to participate. Not all the young people are so motivated to be in a. Well, they have their own concerns, but I think they are quite open, and we're trying to do our best. Very important what one of the girls over there says, that, I mean, I've said that the young generation, the young people feel neglected and they think we don't hear them. I think that this, and as I said, there is a bigger generation gap with youth than there was when we were young, and I realized that. And I think we have to make a very big effort to talk, to listen, and trying to understand that they are going to be the ones who will, no, we're trying to figure their future, so they have to collaborate with us. So yes, I'm sorry that we don't listen so much. I mean, we were young too, but it's as if we forget, no? And maybe, I hope it doesn't happen to you. So, et pour le monsieur, bon, je pense que c'est... Vous avez dit que le panel était peut-être raciste. Moi, je pense que les personnes qui ont fait ça, ils n'ont pas eu l'intention de que ce soit raciste. On pourrait dire que c'est trop féministe parce qu'on est trop de femmes. Mais je pense que c'est un fishing bowl. Donc, tout le monde peut venir et s'asseoir et parler. Je suis totalement d'accord avec vous que les jeunes ne sont pas la jeunesse est très différente, ça dépend, comme vous avez dit, du sexe, de l'origine, la géographie, mais même dans le même pays, il y a des jeunes qui sont dans des situations différentes, donc il faut faire très attention à cela. Aussi, c'est vrai que les conseils de la jeunesse ne peuvent pas servir peut-être dans votre pays, mais ici, on est en train de partager nos bonnes pratiques. Nous sommes en train d'essayer de mettre en valeur ce que chacun fait. Et bien sûr, nous serons en Espagne, nous sommes heureux de parler avec vous, peut-être c'est vous qui nous aidez à améliorer nos choses. Et donc, je pense que la coopération internationale est très importante et aussi la coopération bilatérale pour s'aider à améliorer les choses qui ne vont pas bien. Et à propos des objectifs de développement sustainable, je pense que c'est vrai, il faut avoir des compromis bien définis à la fin du panel, mais aussi, moi je pense c'est très facile de parler de 2030 parce que c'est très loin. Et donc les gens sont très ambigus. Et je dis oui. Donc, comme c'est dans 2030, moi je parle, je suis le meilleur, je veux tout bien faire. Donc, il faut faire très attention. Parce que peut-être les gens maintenant, comme nous ne sommes pas si jeunes, nous pensons, bon, je ne serai pas là. Mais donc il faut être très sérieux, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de discours politiques et après, il n'y a pas de mesures. Donc, moi je pense que ça, c'est une recommandation que tous nous devons. Donc, merci pour votre participation.
Okay. Hercules?
I think I agree with you in regards to your question. There needs to be a feedback mechanism. But also, government needs to really be realistic and frank when they speak with young people. Because young people, like someone said, really ambitious. So we have to be frank with them and create that feedback mechanism. Yep.
Tatev?
Just one point that I wanted to add. What you said about the feedback, it was one of my points that we have to show, you have to show as a representative of government, you have to show the young people what the influence would be after these forums, discussions, platforms, etc. But as a young people, as a youngsters, representative of young people, I think that we also have some work to do. We have to make them to listen to us. That's my point.
Thank you. As we are on time, it seems we can cover all questions. And I would like to thank everyone and summarize our discussion. So, what we mean by saying young people? We mean knowledge, inclusion, change, better future, and going along the time. And what should do government is to have a political will, understanding, implementation of participation of young people, and engaging them in decision-making processes, and also implementation of young ideas. So these are the ideas which government can have within its capacity. So I think we can make this day and this discussion. Thank you to everyone and to all of you. Thank you.